Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Slant 3D podcast, the show about 3D printing and our place inside the industry. Today, we're going to be talking about the expansion of Tangled, some updates to our API, other content coming through, and then talking about Boise, and of course, finishing it off with your questions from last week's podcast. But before that, let's go ahead and pay the bills. This episode is brought to you by the Bambu Lab A1 combo. If you've been looking for the perfect first 3D printer, or just need a printer that's easy and quick to set up right out of the box, you should check out the Bambu Lab A1 combo. This is a partially assembled but quick to set up machine that is both fast and incredibly precise. With its Cartesian motion system and active vibration compensation, it delivers smooth, high quality prints without the usual headaches. And the best part, the A1 combo includes Bambu's AMS light system, so you can print in multiple colors and materials effortlessly. No more swapping spools, just load it up and let the printer do the work. It's also incredibly easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, the one-click printing through MakerWorld means you can start printing high-quality models in minutes. So if you want a fast, reliable, and hassle-free 3D printer, check out the Bambu Lab A1 combo. Head to the link in the description to grab yours today. All right, guys. So today I was in our content meeting and I was talking to Chris and he said, is there any news in the podcast this week? And I was like, I don't know yet. I haven't worked on it yet, or I haven't looked. And then I'm sure there is something. And then I went and looked for news and there was nothing. So there is no news this week. Everybody, I think, is storing it up for Rapid. There is the Bambu Lab H2D rumor release tease that came out, but there's nothing to talk about. There's only speculation there. It's probably a multi-extruder headed machine that is going to replace the P1P. Whoopity-doo. They're going to improve their multi-material problem, which is the primary problem that they have, and Bambu responds to the primary problems that exist in any given moment, so they're fixing that. Good for them. I'll bet it's not a bigger format. That's the news. So, moving into Tangled. Okay, so Tangled. Tangled's in a really interesting spot. We've got a couple months of data since we started up the subscription, and that has hit stability. So now we're up and kind of keeping the rhythm, and we know what's going to happen. Memberships will be opening back up here probably, if not today. I recommend going and checking. In the next couple of days, memberships will probably open up from when you're watching this video. And that'll be in cadence to where we're happy with that surge. Because every time we open up memberships, a whole mess of people shove in the door and order Filament, which creates this big old spike, which messes with our distribution. So we're trying to even that out a little bit. So it's a steady burn up about here rather than, big old spike, nothing, big old spike, nothing, as people's subscriptions renew. So we're trying to spread out the points when people start up their subscriptions. Okay, but in addition to that, Tangled is going to expand. And what we're doing here is we are actually working on a partnership, a retail partnership, with a couple of filament manufacturers. And effectively what we're doing is we're using our scale again. Slant 3D uses a lot of filament, consumes a lot of filament, and with Tangled we're now able to actually kind of sell a decent amount of filament. So we are putting together retail agreements with some manufacturers in order to have filament still very affordably priced because we don't have to make margin off of it. We can just resell it basically at cost and be a distributor. So there'll be additional materials and additional colors coming to Tangled, looks like fairly soon. We've got to math this a little bit more to see how it shakes out, but I think it'll be really nifty. It's really exciting because it does let us do some nifty kind of business jiu-jitsu with this whole thing. The one thing that might come up with it is we may structure it like a pre-ordering situation to where you pre-order material ahead of time, which either is accessed through the membership or it might be public. We're not sure where that's going to be. This is a scale game, so having as many people involved, whether they're a member or not, is important. The one thing that's messing with us is that shipping cost is a problem. But we have one of our new facilities going in here in just a couple of months, so it may serve as the point of distribution so that becomes even more viable. Or at least we can start it up early here, run it break even, and then get to profitability here in a couple of months when that other space opens up and shipping cost is less. So there is that. We will be introducing new colors almost certainly that can be sold along with the black, or can be purchased along with the black. and probably new materials. We'll probably introduce PETG. And in fact, as I think about this right now, Black PETG will probably be the first release, and we'll do a test with it and see how it goes. But beyond that, that's the news. That'd be the news. Tangled is in an interesting spot. It's hit stability here now, so we know we're able to project around it. So we're going to start putting some fresh investment into it and getting it ramped up again. $10 per spool over there. Unless you're a non-member, then it costs more. I don't know what it is right now. Okay, Teleport updates. Teleport, like I say, guys, for the last couple months or so, we've been working a lot on the back end. So like core infrastructure stuff as Teleport is scaled up, because Teleport grows pretty darn fast. And we want to make sure that the system is stable so that it doesn't run into some sort of wackadoodle situation there. So redirecting machine capacity, revamping some of the bones of the software itself, all that kind of stuff have all been things we're doing there. Updates will start coming out reasonably soon, those updates will include instant refund, flat rate shipping, and some more colors will be dropping. I'm not going to talk about that too much more, but that will be Teleport. But an observation that the guys threw in my notes here for this one, even though Teleport is growing really fast, and it has been fascinating to see that many of the most successful users of Teleport we've never spoken to. They are absolutely the lowest maintenance people we've run into are the top sellers almost universally. And I was thinking about this, and we need to do this as a discussion topic or something. But in sales, it's kind of a cliche that the person who you need to talk to the most is very often the least likely to buy. It's like the tire kicker. The person who wanders around, asks about all the features, needs a test drive, kicks the tires, wanders through, so on and so forth, and wanders home to think about it. As opposed to the person who walks in and says, "Do you have a car?" And then you say, "Here's a car that works pretty good." And they're like, "Cool, I trust you. Here's the money." And they drive away with the car. It is so true that people who are really, folks who are stopped by all the details rather than just plowing through it, become very high maintenance and ultimately don't convert because there's so many details that they can never digest them all. But yeah, it's just fascinating that many of the biggest users of Teleport we've never said two words to. They went and read the tutorials, uploaded it, set up an Etsy store, connected to their store or something, and started doing $10,000 a month or something. And it's fascinating to watch. And it's awesome to watch because it's cool to see that it's a tool that enables people to grow like that, because they don't have to buy more machines. They're able to just plug into us and then scale the business. So a lot of people who are really business savvy, who know how Facebook ads work or know how to do a video on TikTok Shop, are able to leverage 3D printing but take those skills and run with it. So it's opened up a whole new category of kind of people who use 3D printing to get access to the hobby. And they're like, I don't want to build a print farm. I don't want to run a factory. I want to sell the stuff. There's cool things out there to be sold. And there's cool ways of getting it done. 3D printing creates all these advantages of no inventory, international shipping, these kind of things, to where they're just like, Teleport, plug it in, go. And that just doubled my business. Somebody in Europe is like, oh, US distribution without international shipping cost. Doubled my business. I'll turn that on. So it's fun to see how people are using it and bumping it around. Some guys have focused entirely on design, and they're just like, we've talked about this before, but there's a couple of people who are doing the business model that I think works best here, which is you create 20 versions of a product, you find out which one kind of sells or gets the most traffic, and then you create 20 versions of that product, and then you continue to evolve. This is what it is. You have a set of parents, they have 5 kids, one kid survives, that one kid gets married, and then they have 5 more kids, and one of them survives and gets married and has 5 more kids, and then you get evolution. That is exactly the same process inside of product creation. And it's happening. Teleport users are doing that, not as often as I would expect it to be, but it's happening. Okay, API. An update on API. We haven't done one in a while. We're going to have version 3 of the API drop about the same time that the upgrades for Teleport come through, because the version 3 API is actually the new bones for Teleport that we're putting in. The version 3 API has expanded functionality around payments and just some refinements in it and that kind of stuff. The current API is really simple. You can request a quote, and then you can request an order, and them's the two things you can do. Very simple calls, so it's quick and easy to use there. But since we've been working on V3, updates to the version 2 API may not have been fully documented. So there's a little bit of iffiness on that. But again, it's a stupidly simple API. Like, of the APIs out there, we have 5 calls, less than 10 endpoints that you can actually call. You can get a quote, you can get an estimate, you can make the order, and then you can get shipping information from it. I'm pretty sure those are the only endpoint calls that you can make with the API right now. There might be a couple of others the guys might have added in since the last time I did a review of it all. But anyhow, by the way, I was talking with a partner this week who is looking at the API, and it was so fascinating to see where their expectation was of it, because it was way lower than where it was. They were like, yeah, we've tried these APIs before, but they're really slow. It takes like 3 minutes to process. It takes like 30 seconds to process the file. So people can't really quote through or run a bunch of tests, and they can only process like 20 files an hour. And I'm like, wait, whoa. What now? 100 files an hour, 50 hours and parts of 30 seconds for processing? I was like, no. Our API gives an instant quote. It's generally like 100 milliseconds, definitely less than a second for any given part that you have. Like, this was a fundamental spec of our API to make it fast enough and scalable. We can process through frickin' things in a weekend and quote the cost of all of those 3D models on there stupidly fast. And it was cool to see that, because I hadn't really benchmarked us against other APIs, because quite frankly, nobody else exists. There's a few who kind of have something, but no, our API is blazingly fast for estimations and confirmations of orders. And again, just very few endpoints there. But yeah, I hadn't realized just how fast it was, but we have people processing thousands of files through our API system. It's like people uploading like their catalog through Teleport, or in the API, people messing around with stuff. Thousands of files per day. And we've never like capped it out in any sort of way to where, the processing was the bottleneck ever. So that's not really news. That's like a humble brag, but V3 is not any faster. It still uses that core tech that we developed from the V1, but V3 has expanded stuff mainly around like kind of developer experience. Because right now with like version 2 of the API, if you purchase a file, if you make the order, then you pay for that order in that moment. And then you bill your user if you made like an AI 3D model generator app, and you get a quote for the 3D model that's generated, and we say it costs $5 to make it. And then you say, okay, $5 plus 25% margin. That's what you present to the user. And then the user pays you $6 and you pay us $5.50. And then we ship the item out and you make $1. Some developers didn't like that multi-step process because there's 2 Stripe transactions inside of it. They have a Stripe charge to the user, and then there is a Stripe charge from our payment processing. I was kind of against. They wanted effectively a pass through. I want to make sure I explain this right, because I'm a little bit loopy. I might get this off. They wanted an endpoint to where the user could input their payment details and pay us directly, and effectively the software developer is just a facilitator. So maybe they get their money from like a subscription, but they're not getting it on the per print or per purchase standpoint. There were a number of developers who asked for that. So that's coming in V3. I still don't understand it, because even if you have the Stripe charges twice, Stripe is basically credit card fees, which is 3 to 4%. So you have a 10% increase of the cost. Okay, on a $50 part, that's $5. That's still nothing in the context of a $50 part. And it's pennies if you're in a sub $10 part. So I kind of didn't get the rationale of it, because in the context of the total cost of the project or the order, it's nothing. But folks were asking for it, and you listen to your users. So while I disagree with that, and if I was building an app, I wouldn't care, is what it is. I don't understand why people are passing through that charge or allowing or not wanting to have transaction revenue, as in a 25% margin for using your app to get access to our API, because your app is providing some value there. Having a full pass through where they're just paying us to print it seems like a miss. But anyway, the API can do that now, soon. Not now. It hasn't been released yet, but it's coming. Content news. Other YouTube channel, the Slant Pod YouTube channel, our business-focused YouTube channel. So over there, we're consistently getting videos out over there. In fact, it's probably getting them more consistently than we're putting out here on the Slant 3D channel. The Slant 3D channel is in kind of a weird spot right now where we're just evolving team and figuring out the content that we want to do, because we're at this new echelon where the content has to continue to improve and increase. But we also have our winners, but we have to be experimental, but we have to hit our winners. And we've done all we need to do with the winners. We've taught every feature of how to design for 3D printing. If anybody has ideas, comment down below. But we've probably done it in a video already. So we're working over there on the POD channel heavily, because that's the highest value for all of our teleport users around ideation, how to sell, how to price, how to do taxes, those kind of things. And it also allows us to expand the audience to people beyond pure 3D printing folks. So the Slant POD channel is over there. Good content over there. One of the video series that we're doing right now is the 5 3D printing business ideas. And we basically run through 5 ways of building a 3D printing business in each one of these videos. And there's 5 or 6 of the videos in progress. I don't know how many of them have been published yet. But those are going out. And I think they're really good, because just from like a case study standpoint, they're helpful to know how to go about doing a thing with 3D printing as like the core enabler, whether it's prosthetic hands or do you sell maps in a gift shop or whatever it happens to be. Simultaneously with the Slant 3D content and all this stuff, we're working on moving into a new room and a new studio. So that should be coming fairly soon. Like literally as I'm recording this, I'm rearranging the place where it belongs. It's downstairs. But we're in the upstairs. The studio is upstairs in the second story of the building right here. But we're going to try to make that deeper and allow us to do more like live streams and more like screen capture sort of stuff for education and lead on that way. And then last thing on content there, Reddit, the Reddit page, 3D Print Entrepreneurs, r/3D Print Entrepreneurs. The Reddit page is open and available. Really good engagement over there. I think there's like 220 followers over there right at the moment. Pretty good discussions. It's going to be the spot where we do a lot of support around teleport and documentation around teleport. And that's where you can also find your crew to share stuff about teleport. We have people sharing sales from their Etsy stores. People who will allow us to share their sales. We share them for them sometimes. Case studies, YouTube videos about how to set up a 3D printing business and celebrating the wins, so that when you hit your first $1,000, you can go over there and everybody can give you a high five and that kind of stuff. We think it's great to build up that community around actually doing stuff with the technology and making a living with it. Because there just needs to be more content and more places to go for that kind of stuff. So yeah, our 3D print entrepreneurs over there on Reddit, I highly recommend checking it out. Should be fun. Yeah, should be a lot of fun. New segment. We're going to try this out. New segment. We're going to pull down a model each week, and I'm just going to do a design review here on podcast. We're going to see how it goes, because this is the only camera view that we have. This model was printed on the A1, who is sponsoring this video this week. And it was brought down by Maker World. This design is a phone holder handle set. It is a print-in-place mechanical design with a spring set off separately that you print onto there. You can see it right there. Give it just a little bit of view. I want to talk about the profile here, because this is going to come up. So I'll make sure everybody can see that. And then the back. The print bed is right here. It prints all like this. So this stand, as a product, good idea. A phone holder for gaming and this kind of stuff, not a bad idea. There's plenty, needs to be more of those around. It makes total sense. This looks to be the main profile for an iPhone. That's fine. It looks like it's something you can squash. It's not meant to be squashed. This spring is purely a tension spring, so it's just meant for spreading and then squeezing the phone down to that size, and hopefully the phone is larger. It does not feel like that spring is appropriately sized. I would recommend, rather than this type of spring, either put more tines inside of there of the spring so that it can have more stretch and kind of a lighter pull. The other thing, this whole mechanism of the spring, this spring can be print in place, flat panel across the back right here, that the spring rests on top of. It'll break free when you print it there. And then you can put a top over that also so that the spring is embedded inside of the part. We did a wall latch video a little while back where we talk about this, but that spring can totally be inside the part. It does not need to be printed separately. Also, having a top panel right there will prevent these small pins from breaking off because these pins are in the wrong orientation. So all of that can be contained. This whole back can then be flush. You don't have the spring there. You don't have to install the spring. It's much more print on demand. For something like our teleport app, you can just upload it all and you know nobody's going to miss anything. The overall design of it from there, there's a lot of flat space on top. I would round that out entirely because when printing it, there's a lot of kind of missing gaps from the printer just not extruding enough, or the material is gray, so it has a little bit weirder flow. So you get kind of weird artifacting on the top to where the ceiling isn't like solid and perfect looking. Text on the top, that's all fine. The walls are okay. But yes, I would say make the whole back one single solid plate. Have these sliders slide along that plate because it's fine. Again, have that spring contained inside of there so that it's all one flush thing. It'll print more reliably, stick to the bed more reliably. Actually, this is kind of designed that way already. It slides together and then it spreads and you put the spring in. So it's pretty much that way already, but the spring can be embedded in it. Here's the thing though. The thing that kind of bothers me, when you're holding it, the profile from the side has an angle to where both the elephant foot and the actual profile itself sends it out this direction. I'm actually not certain if this is fully design or just the elephant foot from the printing, but it splays out and it creates sharpness on the bottom here where I'm gripping it. So the thing to do with that, if you've got the whole back flush, thicken it and crop it off and round it out more, especially on these handle sides, so that you actually have something to grip. You can lift this all up, and actually if the print bed is right here, just angle the model like that so that you can thicken the grips but the rest of it stays thin. Again, it would remain print in place because all of that can settle in there, and then you also don't have the flats falling down, so it actually would probably print in place better. Doing it like this, you would have to print the spring separately again to keep it in plane. But if you print it all like that, make it thicker this direction so that you don't have the bite on the back and the handles are thicker and chunkier. I know I have enormous hands, but the overall design of it could be improved there. Or just make sure you do a chamfer all the way around the outer edge so that there's no way that elephant footing can ever be an issue, regardless of what machine you upload with. But the product as a whole, I think is good. I think this is a good concept, and I think this is absolutely a fine first prototype. But I would like but the refinement of it and getting it to like full product status to where you could really sell them and just like upload it and go. There's a few steps to be made on that to where it's like an enjoyable product. The other thing I would do is I would probably put like a bunch of little microspheres or rings inside of the handles so that it induces walls right here so that infill is automatically higher just from the CAD, and then you'd have a little bit of heft in the handles when it first came off. Take longer to print, sure, but it would be heavier. And that would improve kind of the feel of it when a person gets a product. Because the one thing that's kind of wrong is that rattle. That makes it feel cheap, chintzy, dollar store kind of stuff, or what kind of haters say about 3D printing. But this could be made very premium feeling. It just needs some refinement. And curves are a tough thing to do, and this needs a bunch of curves. But yeah, I would say, there's things that can be done here pretty readily to improve it, but as a concept, I think it's fine. Have it cinch down a little bit better by improving the spring, round out the bottoms, round out the tops, and embed that spring totally inside of that slot, and just make the whole thing thicker. And that is the print of the day. Okay, discussion topic of the week before getting into questions. We need to get out of Boise. This is prompt down here. So we've been doing the Series A. We've been doing a Series A fundraising round. It's very close to being finished. It might be finished as of recording of this. I don't know. But the Series A, none of the investors are from our local community. We sent an email to the one firm who's doing kind of VC in the local Boise area. And they said no outright because I disagreed with the guy about what a Series A was. And I didn't mind telling him. So here's the thing, guys. I consider letting Slant 3D start. And no, I'm not going to go down that road right now. Boise is not an ideal place for a technology startup, especially a high-tech manufacturing startup, which is what we are. It's not ideal. And it's probably historically has hurt us, but at this point we've outgrown it, so it doesn't matter as much. Like we're too international and present out in the world now. During the real deep grinding days, when like you don't exist at all in any format, Boise's the wrong spot to be doing that. But we got through it. The reason Boise is wrong is because, let me look at this a different way. Why is Silicon Valley so successful? Why is Silicon Valley so successful, and why has it not been replicated really anywhere else? This came up, somebody emailed me this the other day. But the reason Silicon Valley is so successful is because in order to create a company and have a thriving ecosystem, you need capital, talent, infrastructure, and I'm going to say the infrastructure, I'm going to say culture, but that's kind of part of infrastructure. So talent, capital, culture, and infrastructure. Capital is obvious. You need money around, and you need a lot of money around because starting a company is such a high-risk endeavor that a lot of money has to be expended in order to get to the successes. Silicon Valley has had money kind of available since pre-World War I and during World War I. During World War I, Lockheed Martin and other firms were down in San Diego and next to Stanford, and there was a lot of this talent, engineering talent, creating really advanced technology in the neighborhood. Those people have their careers, they work at the company, so on and so forth, and the kids start tinkering in the garage with a personal computer. So there's a long history of money being available, and that money being available around high technology, which is deeply good at utilizing that money. So an investor can invest $1 million in 10 separate companies, and since technology has such high rate of returns, they could get a return on their investment. So the high risk of investing in companies that are startups was more viable. Startups are stupidly high risk. Most investors go look at the company and say, okay, how much did you sell in the last 10 years? Okay, what you sell this year? Okay, who are you? You've been around for 10 years? Cool, you're pretty reliable. I'll give you some money. You're probably going to be able to continue the trend. That's different from investing in a startup that has no historicals. Stupidly high risk. So you need a bunch of money around. Talent. To create a startup from nothing and have it be successful, you need really hardworking, really smart people. Again, the whole history, engineering history of California and San Diego and San Francisco is just so long and so deep with such a deep educational base to where the people coming out of Stanford are the best of the best, and Stanford has that street cred of creating the best of the best and that kind of stuff. Even in comparison to like MIT and that kind of stuff now. That creates a ecosystem of people that you can pull from into these companies who are young, hardworking, really, really smart, and cheap coming straight out of college, is what it is. Infrastructure is kind of having the people to hire, having fiber optic internet that's fast and reliable, like just roads that work, places to live, that kind of a thing. You can't do it in the desert. Like Las Vegas in the early days couldn't have done this because they had no infrastructure. They had no universities, that kind of stuff. That's a very baseline sort of thing that a lot of cities have. A lot of cities have infrastructure that could support it, but they're missing one of the other ones. Infrastructure, talent, money, culture. The culture is a whole different thing because the culture takes decades, if not centuries, to create. Again, Silicon Valley has a culture of creation. and kind of a rough-hewn American Wild West. We're going to get this done however we can do it. This exists in Texas too, which is why like Austin and other hubs like that can do what they do, and Texas is as independent as it is. But Silicon Valley especially, from the gold rush all the way up again to military history of developing technology and being really good at it. And then over the last 80 years, taking that technology and turning it into companies has been a very long development cycle, to where now you have this history of Apple, HP, and then Apple, and so on and so forth. And you could say Microsoft and those guys in Seattle exist in Seattle, but Seattle doesn't have the same cultural history. But anyhow, San Francisco has this long history of creating companies, high-tech companies, to where if you are a really talented computer engineer or startup founder or something, you are going to go to San Francisco because that's where that happens. There's tons of money floating around. There's tons of talent floating around, so you can find co-founders and team members and that kind of thing. And everybody around you is doing the same thing. So you're able to bounce off of each other and feed off of the energy. When you're having a bad day, your buddy's having the best day ever. When you're almost broke, they just raised $1 million. When you're building a product that you think is good, somebody launches something that's even better just across the coffee shop. Like there's just all of this Brownian motion going on to where you're around it all. Well, I always say, getting off the plane in San Francisco, different cities around like Boston, those kind of things, you feel electricity in the air. Everybody's doing something. And that is culture. When you get off the plane in Boise, Idaho, you say, this is so nice, so relaxing. And that is the worst thing about Boise. From a startup standpoint, Boise is a comfortable town. Boise has sold itself as a comfortable town. It's a nice place to raise a family. We have nice, safe streets. We have all these things. That's all great, unless you're a startup. Because with that culture, with that history, with that intention and expectation, people are like, I'm going to leave at 3 p.m. on Friday and go test craft beers at the brewery. No! We're going to down a Red Bull and we're going to code for the next 24 hours. Damn it. There's so much gravity in a city that does not have an entrepreneurial culture to where you're fighting against mediocrity all the time. In addition to that, since Boise is a small town in the middle of nowhere, we have no money. The biggest venture firm that we have in the the biggest money firm that we have that kind of does startup investing raised a $21 million round this last year to do it. $21 million. That's adorable. I'm sorry, it is what it is. Prior to that, in 2018, the biggest firm to that point had $10 million. That is what we're dealing with in Boise. That is not a hardy ecosystem. Now, here's the thing. Anybody who's watching in Boise, if this gets out, I've written blogs about this before. People already dislike me for talking about this. But Boise doesn't have a tech ecosystem. There are not enough companies to invest in. There's not enough money to do investment in the companies that are around. And the culture is so... Here's another example of culture. That venture firm started a monthly entrepreneurial meetup where they said, oh, come on down. We're going to get all the entrepreneurs together so that we can share war stories because it's really low to start a company. I talked to a couple buddies and I was invited and I was like, sure, yeah, I'll go. What time is it? 5 p.m. Now, a normal person might say, what the hell's wrong with that? And that's the problem. 5 p.m. is the moment the workday ends. In order for me to get to the event, I would have to leave the office a half hour early, setting a bad example for my team, saying, oh no, at least 8 hours workday doesn't apply to me. I'm going to drive across town and hobnob with other people at 5 p.m. This firm that is trying to encourage entrepreneurship can't set it to 7:30. Why can't they set it to 7:30? Because everybody wants to get home to their families. Again, not a bad thing. Terrible for starting a company. You need to put ancillary events not related to growing my business outside of normal business hours, not in the middle of them. But the fact that they don't recognize that and don't understand that is the problem. They're not supporting us. They're making themselves feel important. And this goes to a deeper cultural problem with Boise. Boise has a very tiny fish in a tinier pond kind of an attitude that is really debilitating if you allow it to get to you. Like, here's the thing. Like, as a startup in Boise, quite frankly, we're doing quite well. We're a big success story. It's like, oh, look, Slant 3D has 150,000 subscribers. They're one of the biggest YouTube channels in the state of Idaho. I could be puffed up by that, except for the fact that it's the biggest thing in the state of Idaho. That's nothing compared to the world. But Idaho doesn't understand that. And many of the people inside of Idaho don't think in that direction. They don't realize how small we are compared to the rest of the world, because we seem really big when we're looking from side to side and left to right at the guy to my right and the guy to my left. But we're not. We're nothing. We are a tiny YouTube channel in the context of everything, and Boise is a tiny, tiny ecosystem in the context of everything. And another really simple way of evaluating this is, does anybody come to Boise to create a startup? The answer is no. We grew here. We were here from a previous thing. That's why we exist here. I would not have moved here to start Slant 3D. There's so much stuff about this kind of small man complex that Idaho has that's really poisonous, because you think you've reached the summit, but you've just reached this little local maximum of a very small hill. But and it's really important for us, and what I try to tell my team and why I'm having this discussion like publicly here, you need to compare yourself to the best. So when we're doing any of this stuff, I don't compare myself to the other startup founders inside of Boise or Idaho, or Slant 3D to other companies in Idaho. I compare it to Silicon Valley or Boston or anywhere else in the world where exceptional work is being done. And we look at those guys and say, why are we so much worse than them? Rather than looking at the guys that we're near and saying, we're so much better than you. It's like, it doesn't matter. Because number one, looking down is not useful in any sort of way, and it's a prick move. And looking up actually maintains aspirations and maintains pressure of where you need to be so that you're never really done. Like, if you want to play professional sports, you don't look at your high school basketball team. You go look at frickin' LeBron, and you say, oh, that's what I got to get to. Okay, I need to work out more, whatever it happens to be. But Idaho doesn't do that. So no, Idaho does not have a tech ecosystem. There's not enough money. The culture is wrong because it is not intense enough or business focused enough. Boise, Idaho is very relaxed and very small town, middle America kind of culture, which is fine. That is fine for raising a family, that kind of thing, running a hot dog stand, all that kind of stuff. That's all totally fine, and there's nothing morally wrong with that. But it's really bad for starting startups because there's no intensity and there's no electricity. And when it's so darn hard to create a company and really, really hard to make it a big one, you need all the energy you can get from wherever you can get it. And Idaho doesn't do that. It creates a gravity field that you have to fight against because we're like, 16-hour days, full speed ahead. And everybody else is going home at 3 p.m. to drink beer. That's really tough to create an intense culture around. And additionally, Idaho, not a lot of startups get started in Idaho. We don't have enough talent. We have Micron here, but Micron as an organization is very monolithic corporate bureaucracy. So it doesn't throw off a lot of startup founders or even startup expertise because much of the engineering is done overseas. So Micron here is very administrative. We have had a couple of billion-dollar companies start and grow here. But the problem I have with that is that they are either entirely remote, like one of them, I'm mispronouncing. No, I think it's Tavuli. I think I'm saying that wrong. It's something or another. But all their team is someplace else. And they're a pure software company and they're full remote. We have other software companies, full remote. And that's fine, but that you don't get to say that you're an Idaho-based company. You're not. You're a remote company sucking culture from everywhere else. And again, I don't know. It is what it is. They exist very heavily in other places. A lot of their remote workers are in San Francisco. And the CEOs fly down there often. So I don't consider them to be based in Boise. I consider them started in Boise. Yeah. So anyhow, and if you go to like a startup night, we don't have tech startups created here because Boise is an agricultural state. We do a lot of stuff with food. A lot of companies around food processing, finance. We have a decent amount of finance because we had T-Sheets, which was acquired by Intuit a few years ago. All of the companies, except for like one currently, have been acquired. Aside from, none of them have gone public except for Micron. So again, expectations. I know the vast majority of companies get acquired or die, but even so, to only have one IPO, there's got to be more IPOs. I feel like I'm underselling that, but I only know of one IPO out of the state of Idaho. I'm certain that's wrong. I hope that's wrong, but it was Micron 30 years ago or whatever it's been. But that's all to say and to elaborate on the fact that Idaho does not have a tech ecosystem. The one that does exist is very dispersed, very spread out. You can't go to the startup scene. The startup scene is food startups, some tech startups, marketing firms, whatever it was. It's just really high mix. There's not a trend in any direction. And the culture as a whole is very good, but not good for startups because there's not intensity in it. There's not an inherent intensity in it. So yeah, that's where our headquarters is. But that's also why we work so hard to move out of Idaho. I'm very proud of our team here at Slant 3D because we are pulling out people out of there who are outliers of what that is. They are not the average. They are abnormal. So we're able to do abnormal things, and that's what's necessary. But if you're starting a startup, that's hard and challenging. I don't recommend doing it this way. Get to a place where there's air, and it's way easier to breathe, where there's money, where there's copious amounts of talent, and a general dream of changing the world just everywhere in the coffee shop. That way you're riding a wave. And yeah, you might fall off your board and drown or whatever it was, but you get to ride the wave because that sure beats paddling. And we've had to do lots of paddling. And we're opening up other facilities so that we'll start having cross-pollination of culture from other places. And that will be good. Okay. Hopefully that was useful. Yeah, I wrote a blog post about this 5 years ago. I've actively had people call me to their office talking about it. Because I wrote that pre-pandemic. I wrote a blog post that says Boise does not have a tech ecosystem in 2019. And post-2020, it looked like it might have been changing. It looked like enough people would have been moved. Oh, people who move here. We've had a huge amount of transplantation into Idaho. But people moving to Idaho are doing it to get away from the rat race, which again brings the culture of not cowardness, but not the intensity. They don't want to deal with, down there, it was real crazy. I want it easy up here so that I can go drink beer at 3 p.m. I'm like, that's fine, but you're not helping create more startups up here. But politicians look at it and they're like, oh, look at all these programmers who moved up here from San Francisco. And I'm like, those are not, all due respect to the people who moved up here, but they're not the programmers that you want in startups. Because they're raising their family, they're wanting an easier life, all those kind of things. And creating a company is a fundamentally intense endeavor. And there's no way around it. It just is. Again, it's not wrong for folks to want to be in a good town to raise their kids and that kind of stuff. That's a really good thing. And when you have kids, that's the priority. But you can't say it's going to help the startup ecosystem, because it doesn't. Okay. I'm going to kill that right there. All right. Questions from last week. So if you guys have any questions that you want me to answer here on air, go ahead and put a comment down below with question, what your question is, and we'll dig it up. We basically just Control F all the questions and roll from there. Question. Can you talk more specifically about how your machines are so tightly integrated with your print farm? Wait a second. I must have grabbed the wrong podcast. Hang on just a moment. Wait. I grabbed it from the wrong podcast. Son of a gun. I very explicitly grabbed this open to get the one I wanted. Okay. Right. Can you talk about the possibility and reliability of filament recycling? Ooh, interesting. Filament recycling doesn't work. Here's the thing. It doesn't not work. It requires a minimum scale to work. In order to make good filament, you need to make sure it remains clear of impurities and purely mixed. It's really tough to tell if this part is PLA and this part is PETG. A really good expert can tell the difference because, they're printed the same or whatever it was, but they're easy to disguise. Sorting plastic is really difficult between the different types of plastic, unless you're just going to turn it into a park bench. So you have to make sure that the plastic is all well sorted. So all the PLA is over there, all the PETG is over there, all the ABS is over there. All this stuff that looks really similar. You then have to make sure that it's clean. It can't have any dust on it. Somebody can't spit on it or shoot gum into the trash can where the plastic's collected, whatever it was. So you have to clear that. There's just a lot of pre-processing of plastic waste that has to be done in order to recycle it. That's all doable. All the machinery exists to do that. But for it to work well and for it to be economical, you need to have semi-loads of this stuff. And this really comes down to where the 3D printing community is kind of out of touch. We look at our spools and our wasted 3D prints and they say, all that wasted plastic. And I'm like, the number of straws in your state, in your province, in your country are more than all the 3D prints in the planet on the planet combined. Just is. Like, the amount of other plastic waste created compared to the amount of plastic waste created in 3D printing in any format. Wasted spools, 3D prints, whatever it was. The waste generated by the 3D printing world is so small compared to every other form of plastic waste. Just is. So yes, it's feasible. It requires scale. There's not enough scale inside of the industry yet to really support it at scale. But it'll be there. I would say a few more years, maybe us even, some actual recycled filament offerings that are not recycled PETG, which is plastic water bottles turned into filament, but actually like filament that's been turned back into filament, might become feasible. Okay, let's see here. Question. As a functional 3D designer, I enjoy inventing new products and I want to solve niche problems, but I'm wondering how best to market my products and services. When they touch so many different niches, should I stick to relatively few? Should I do a few niches or should I do a lot of niches? One single niche, a lot of products is the best way to go, unless the niche is bad. 3D printing allows you to create hundreds of variations or hundreds of iterations of a product, which has never been possible before with manufacturing, but you're able to do it really affordably. So you are able to experiment. When creating a business or a company or a product, you have to iterate. Discord started out as a gaming company. Instagram started out as a gaming company? No, like a messaging app or something like that. No, they were a gaming. No, they were a gaming company. Instagram was a gaming company. Whoa. Yeah, Discord started out as a gaming company who had this tool, and Instagram started out as a gaming company that had this tool. I think I'm getting those founding stories right. But no, you test and you iterate and you see what starts to become valuable. And then when you have something that seems to be valuable that people are interested in, you double down on that. So initially, I would say you can design for all niches if you can design enough. So if you can do 10 different niches, design 10 products for each one of those niches, find the one that sticks, that people are interested in that product for, whichever one has the most views, the most downloads, the most sales. Then focus in on that niche and create 10 more products or 100 more products for just that niche. And then you're like, oh, in this niche, there is this category that people really like. And then you go from there. So you're taking all of possibility, which you're able to afford to explore because 3D printing lets you try all these things. And then you pare it down a little bit. And then you pare it down a little bit more until you get to something that people really like. And you discover that you're the guy who makes Chrysler cup holders with ducks on the side. I don't know. But you start out really broad, and then you go narrower and narrower and narrower if you have no context at all. If you know that people kind of need this thing, if you are a fan of the niche and you know you really like duck cup holders inside of Chryslers, start with your niche. Start with the stuff that you're interested in, because there'll be other people who are interested in it. So if you have no idea, start really broad, do all the experimentation, and evolve towards the truth. If you have some interest already that parallels what you're doing, what you want to design, start with that interest and try to find other people who are interested. Share it in groups and forums. And then you can evolve out from that because you have a seed already. So you're information gathering. If you have information already, congrats. All right. Next question. What's the difference between spoolless and master pool spools? Are they the same thing? Same thing. Spoolless are refills that require some primary spool that wraps around it. Okay. Other questions? I don't think we had too many questions here. If you want functional parts made, why don't you offer more functional filaments? I own a motorcycle parts manufacturing company. There is $1 million industry solely customized high-end parts such as engine covers, levers, intake guards. Yeah. We have the models, but not the time to produce. Never mind the 8-figure untapped industry in the performance automotive sector for CF parts. What's more profitable, 100 units at 500 parts or 2,500 units of a $20 toy? Exactly the same profitability, actually. This is the thing. You're correct. But the vast majority of motorcycle manufacturers and automotive manufacturers, parts manufacturers, are not yet open to CF modified parts because they will have the model that could be 3D printed, but the 3D print won't look as good as an actual design. So there needs to be a design for manufacturing exercise here where the intakes and covers and manifolds and caps and stuff are redesigned for FDM and then upgraded. We're happy to introduce carbon fiber reinforced nylon. If you are willing to upload those models and start selling them on Teleport, it's purely a demand thing. There is not the proven demand for CF parts. Over the last 5 years or so, for us doing mass production, people could bring us any project they wanted. CF doesn't come up that often. It should, but it doesn't come up that often because people are still in kind of a machining mindset to where they're like, I'll machine it out of aluminum and move on with life. But you're right. 100 units of 500 parts, $500 a part would be great, but you have to sell 100 units. And that's always where the sticking point is. It's like, can this get sold? And it hasn't started selling enough. But if you are in the industry and you have a connection and you can go to the trade shows or you can create the website and share it to the forums where it matters, and you know which parts can be printed reliably, do it or share it. Go to our Reddit page and say, hey, somebody do this so that somebody can grab it. We should just do an ideation post or thread over there for people who want to suggest stuff. Because, I think this is a great idea. I think there's, all kinds of parts and pieces in automotive and motorcycles that could be 3D printed that are not being 3D printed right now. As soon as there are, we will absolutely put CF on Teleport and in access through anywhere else. We can absolutely print it. But the demand just isn't there to support it right now because keeping that stuff dry for a year just isn't worth the effort right now until people are using it. Question: what do you think of the current trend of 3D printers makers to have their users rely on cloud processing slicing? I think it's the... I'm going to stop with the rest of that. That's a little editorialized after that. Cloud processing and slicing has historically been a server expense that wasn't worth it because people could run their slicer on their computer. But now that consumer experience is becoming a priority, cloud slicing is becoming a priority so that you can control the user experience. So I'm not surprised that it's coming up now with the advent of Bambu and that kind of thing, because it went from being a hobbyist thing where people wanted 200 settings and wanted to toggle all the knobs to a consumer product where you have to have as few disruptions in the user experience as possible. Yes. It's a massive market. It's massive market research to aggregate model data and then print and sell those models via online retailers. I don't think that's true, because people who buy 3D prints or models to 3D print are not going to buy 3D prints. So much of the repository data is useless for sales data. A mistake a lot of people make is like going to some website, finding the most downloaded model, and then attempting to sell that most downloaded model on an Etsy store. It doesn't work, because the most downloaded model has nothing to do with the most sellable model. Because the most downloadable model might be cool or interesting to 3D print. It might be interesting to the demographic of people who have 3D printers. But that doesn't mean that normal people who don't have a 3D printer want to buy it. And the people who 3D print definitely don't want to buy it. So the data collection is most certainly useful. I don't really know where yet, outside of maybe starting to give insights to designers of what to design. But again, that's like trending model again. And this is why you have all these fidget dragons. Question: I would like to see your take on joints that need to maintain tightness. For example, action figures and posable toys. So with this is really about material selection. We have a couple of videos. Well, we have a couple of designs in the works. They're not enough to do a video about, around like ball joints and that kind of stuff for 3D printing. The solution to this is really around the actual physical design itself, because traditional posable toys use friction fits, but plastic creeps. And by the way, even injection molded toys have creep in them. It's just much slower because they're using ABS or whatever they happen to use in a Lego. PLA is, as an amorphous plastic, has fantastically high creep. It's almost solid. It's almost a solid liquid, kind of. To where, yes, posable toys don't work because it just spreads and resettles. It has a large plastic region. PETG and that kind of stuff, less so, but still present because they're plastic. There's ways of creating mechanical joints to where you do not push the plastic into its plastic region to where it gets looser over time. For small posable toys, it's tougher, but for those, it's really about design. Beef up the walls. Don't design like an injection molded toy. Think of like a Lego claw, a Lego minifigure claw. That is injection molded and made from a type of plastic that has very low creep. So you can always pop in a little torch and a Lego minifig will be able to hold it forever. To be fair, you're not cycling it through it very often, but it'll hold it forever. If you were designing that same claw with PLA and you wanted to maintain that tension, you could not design it the same way. It would spread. The fingers would spread over time. So make the fingers thicker. Give it more structure, and you will have more rigid joints. The reason minifigure hands are as thin as they are is because they have to be that thin to be injection molded. Some people will be like, oh, the claws have to be like that thin. No, it's not an aesthetic choice. It's a limitation of injection molding that happened to coincide with a hand-looking thing. You can make fat-handed Legos, and everybody still would have bought the Legos because there's no functional reason to have them that thin or design reason to have them that thin. Question: what shipping speed will be planned? Will the flat rate cover? Same shipping speed currently. Like right now, shipping takes somewhere between 2 to 4 days. That'll pretty much hold when the flat rate comes out for teleport shipping. but shipping time will be reducing with our second facility going in this year. We have a facility going into Louisville, Kentucky, which is the UPS distribution hub. So we're 1 day away from anywhere, or at least 1 day away from all 80% of the US population. So shipping time will be greatly reduced, and shipping cost will theoretically reduce along with it, depending on how that all hastens out. We've got some choreography to do, but beyond that, shipping time will get down to about 2 days. Where can I find the settings for your printer's use? I want to print my design at home and see how it will run on Teleport. Go to the FAQ page on Teleport, and the settings are right there. 0.2 resolution, 25% infill, 1 millimeter wall thickness. By the way, tops and bottoms are walls. It's the same. If a cube is turned sideways, it's still the wall. 1 millimeter thickness on the outer side. 0.4 millimeter nozzle. If you need more settings than that, you're overkill. Let's see here. How good is PLA NGO 870? What's the most similar filament to it? NGO 870 is a specific material. There's nothing similar to that. It is that or something else. I'm not going to talk about. NGO 870 was the original PLA Plus or Pro PLA, but Pro PLA and PLA Plus have been co-opted into just stupid brand names, so I have no idea who is actually using NGO 870. 870 is meant to be an ABS replacement PLA. So equivalent thermal properties to ABS, but print like PLA. It does need to be annealed. Finding it, though, and knowing who's actually using that material is really tough. We've extruded it ourselves in the print farm. It's good stuff. Do you think robot arms could be practical for consumer 3D printing? What do you think are the biggest problems arms need to overcome? Could ARM 3D printers using 3D printed parts be the next step in RepRap evolution? This has already been done. Check one of our old videos. We talked about Haddington Dynamics. It was a robot arm that could be a 3D printer. I don't think that's where it's going. The box is the perfect format for 3D printing, bar none. Bedslinger, all the rest of them are dumb. Robot arms won't win out because they're overly complicated, have lower resolution, and a weird size build volume to where consumer experience gets screwed up. So I don't think they'll ever be a thing, but there's currently and will continue to be lots of 3D printed robot arms. It makes a lot of sense over there. I live in a 2-bed flat. I've sold toys and trinkets from my one 3D printer at a few market stalls, but want to scale up. What would be the first step to building a business? How the heck do you find a niche or a good product to practice design skills on? You're selling stuff. Make more of those. Whatever you sold, whatever your best seller is so far, make 10 more variations of that thing and sell those. That's the place to start. You have sales data. Start with your sales data. Don't go looking for new stuff. And then if you want to scale up, upload the models to 3D Print Farm or to Teleport. And that way you can, since you're using the word flat, I'm presuming you're in Europe or Australia, which means that you need US distribution. So uploading the files to Teleport would give you immediate access to the US buyers without having international shipping, and access to hundreds of machines when your item actually goes viral. So go ahead and start up an Etsy store and start selling. Or even better yet, start up a TikTok shop. TikTok shop, I think, is probably better than Etsy at this point. TikTok shop might be better than Etsy. What is your opinion on the current stigma around 3D printed products? And what needs to happen to change that stigma? Literally, that stigma does not exist anywhere on the planet except in the 3D printing community. It's only in the 3D printing community. It's like a bunch of guys with hot rods saying cars aren't fast enough. They're fine. There's the stigma isn't real. Don't put 3D printed in your product listings. Honestly present them. Show that they are 3D printed. Don't like Photoshop stuff. Show the layer lines, but design around the layer lines. We did a video over on the Slant Pod channel literally addressing this. No actual consumer cares that a product is 3D printed. Never has, never will. I know this because we've sold tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of items to customers, and they're fine with them. They're good with them. They know they're 3D printed. They don't care. The only time feedback has come back around the print quality or the 3D print being weak is when the person owns a 3D printer. And there's only 2 million people of those 2 million of those people on the planet, and there's 2 billion other people and there's 8 billion other people to sell to. Print quality is not a concern. I could make the argument that injection molding is garbage because it's only allowed one surface finish. You can apply any surface texture you want to a 3D print, and it's better, and it's free, and it's impossible to do with injection molding. So there's no stigma. And just ignore anybody who whines about it to you because they're wrong and in a bubble that doesn't exist and no one actually cares about. Make a good product. How it's made does not matter. Use the process that works best. In the last podcast, you used the phrase, be sure to design parts that are independent of slicer settings. This was with respect to models intended for FDM 3D printing. I think I know what you mean, but can you explain exactly what you mean? A well-designed 3D printable product can be printed with any machine and any settings reliably. It does not need, 25% infill, and it's got to be printed at 0.2 resolution, and the supports all, no, none of that stuff. And it's got to be on this machine, and I designed this, and I printed this on my machine, and it works okay, but you got to watch out on these other machines. None of that. A well-designed part is stable and reliable with any settings on any machine. For example, I don't like this model, but the Benchy. The Benchy can be printed on any machine because it's a benchmark tool, but is what it is. So you should design your 3D model to create the geometry that you need and not need the slicer to create the geometry that you need. If you use the slicer to create thick walls and a certain infill at certain places, and you're using modifiers and you need it tuned to a specific temp with a specific material, and you have overhangs that only work if the nozzle is 0.4 and not if it's 0.5, you've created a part that is not robust. And therefore, it's not scalable or ready yet. So do make sure that your part can be printed on any machine with any settings. And then you know you have a part that is robust. And that's what that's about. Design. Actually, we do need to do a video on this here for Core Channel because I want this to be common knowledge and promo to our audience. Like designing robust designs that can be printed anytime. This is really important with places like Teleport. There are some models that print great on Teleport and other parts that don't. A really good example of this, like support generation. People who rely on the slicer to generate support are idiots. This automatic support generation is finicky at best and unreliable at worst. If you have a part that needs support in particular areas, you should design that into your CAD model. Support should be a part of the CAD design process because it's not a large effort, but it's deeply necessary. The same way like sprues and cooling channels and overflows are part of the injection mold design process. They do require technical expertise, and they may require like you design a model and then you pass it off to a 3D printing consultant or engineer and they design in the supports. That's all fine. And by the way, manual placement of supports is not a slicer setting. That's manual placement of supports. That's a CAD tool. So, but like auto generation of support and the correct horizontal spacing for support and that kind of thing, that's a bad thing to rely on. Don't rely on slicers for that kind of stuff. So that's what my soapbox is. A well-designed part can be printed on any machine at any time and come out reliably without modifiers or a 3MF or any of the rest of that kind of stuff. It just is. It understands the process well enough to create what is necessary. That's like the entire theme of this YouTube channel. How to design a part to not need slicer settings in order to do what it needs to do. Can you give a story on hardware you developed and challenges, like mistakes you made finding parts? I know you can't disclose everything probably, but I'm curious as to what you can say. Hardware is hard. Developing the hardest part of creating a machine is not the prototype, it's the production. Can you make a device that can be produced at scale? That's a big challenge. And probably the primary area of iteration that we do on our machines. Can we make this more manufacturable? And secondarily, keeping them maintained. Because hardware, unlike software, once it's made, it's done. It's set, it's frozen. Maintaining a fleet of machines that are different versions is challenging. Not impossible, but it's challenging. As opposed to software, like where you have one instance of the software, and when you want to update it, you update it, and then that software everywhere in the world is updated. Cool. That's easy. Also, side conversation about this. This is why it's exceptionally difficult for us to hire developers. Because developers are used to really perfect worlds where it's all in the computer. There's no pipes or wires or physics to have to deal with. It's what you program, and it does what you program. And we deal with hardware and software having to communicate with hardware, and hardware is finicky because physics and heat and all this stuff and reality. Having developers who are able to work in both domains or create robust software that's able to interact with hardware, really tough. Because software is perfect and safe. But as soon as you engage with hardware, a USB port becomes super complicated for the average developer. I shouldn't say that. For the average entry-level developer, a kid coming out of college and that kind of stuff. Like the difference between a webhook and a USB connection might as well be the difference between a model rocket and a space shuttle, because it seems so scary. And since like USB is kind of a finicky connection, it freaks people out about how robust, how durable their software has to be around error checking and the rest of it. Question, are there people who use Teleport who earn more than you? As far as salary? Yeah. We have we have many stores over $100,000 a year. I'm not going to divulge who our biggest store is or how big our biggest stores are. I'm not going to give a ranking right now because I don't think I'm allowed to. So I'm just going to be safe. Okay, let's see. That's it. That's the questions for the day, guys. Man, questions has added a whole extra half hour to podcast. Man, I'm down with it. I think it's great. This is fun. If there's other questions, go ahead and comment down below. What your question is, and we will review them next week. But beyond that, guys, check us out over on the Reddit page. We're on the other socials too, but somewhat intermittently. The Reddit is where other people are also, so everybody can talk to each other. 3D print entrepreneurs on Reddit. And beyond that, have a great week, everybody.